Right, welcome to the first in the Ydentity talk series of the role of blockchain identity in a new digital age. A company called Bright Nations, a new company formed recently, has come up with a very innovative idea around identity, and this is going to be the Ydentity talk series. So this particular one is going to focus in on the usage of the Ydentity, as it's called, into vertical applications. So we have to look first of all at the substrate behind this. The idea is to look at the blockchain technology and how identity fits into that category first of all, and then I'll slot the Ydentity into that area. So when we look at blockchain, we hear a lot of people talking about, smart contracts and ledgers, and you hear a lot about blockchain, but really let's get down to the prime directive of blockchain. Blockchain was actually came about really because of identity. The need for identity, the need for cyber security, the need for data ownership, and the protection of the data layer. And this is the prime reason that we're looking at the blockchain world. So let's say that sovereign identity, the identity of people, the identity of data, the identity of devices should all be on a blockchain so that we can have an audit trail for the future that can't be changed. And no one would lose their identity because they can always get back on the blockchain again. So if we look at a very simple approach of an identity ledger, I have my identity on a ledger, someone else has their identity, and if we want to do something, we put them together on one ledger and we have our identity. Now we don't have to trust each other, we just have the blockchain allows us to transact together because there is an audit trail that can prove what has happened, so nobody has to worry about trusting anyone else because this is an accurate, provable audit trail. And so if I have my trusted identity from person A, we can transfer assets to a trusted identity of person B. Now that can be people, that can be devices, that can be companies, but it's a very important concept that the trusted identity is already there before we start. So if we move to some of the evolution of this, we need to look at what is digital identity. This is a critical currency for cyber criminals. So when we protect the data layer, and when we look at, later on we're going to look into GDPR and things like this, we must realize that identity data happens to be the critical currency for cyber criminals. And if you look at the dark side of the web, where 96% of people that troll the web are in that area, we will see stolen identity floods all over the place. And this is basically medical data from different countries. Medical data has been stolen, it's for sale on the web, and it's because people's identity has gone and their data has gone with it. So this is understanding identity is the opportunity for reducing fraud, reducing expenses, raising the GDP of companies, because we are creating a less friction, a bad environment where there's data is being corrupted and misused. So if we go further, so we must understand identity. That's before we go into Ydentity, we must understand what identity is all about. And self-sovereign identity, different countries onboarding all of their citizens with a single identity. A lot of countries have 8 IDs, for example. They have a government ID, they have a driving license, they have all these IDs that are used, and quite honestly, that is one of the problems because there are far too many identities. So when we look at blockchain, any blockchain application, identity is the common denominator. So we know who owns the data, what owns it, and by placing our identity here, it's very strong and immutable, i.e. it can't be changed. So identity by location is also vital. If I'm sitting in Starbucks and then somebody with my identity signs on in Moscow and I'm sitting in Hong Kong, then obviously someone has stolen my identity. So it's very important to have that validation of identity. And it's about a long time. Although you have one specific identity, you can qualify it with a whole string, and I will get into that in a second. And of course, if you lose your identity, you get back onto the blockchain by identifying that trail of identity. So nobody actually loses their identity. They can always be restored. And this is very, very important for refugees, the human rights, the United Nations, and such like, which is something that we will discuss in a second. It's no good about understanding it, you then have to enforce it. So you need to make sure that bad actors can be identified, and we're going to turn the identity management into what is known as a hash key. So what is a hash key? A hash key is an irreversible cryptographic stamp that enables that to uniquely identify someone from a series of criteria. That identity hash key is stored on a blockchain without any other sensitive data to be stored. So therefore nobody can actually really hack that. And if they did want to hack a blockchain with hash keys, it wouldn't be worth their time because it would cost them more money than what they were getting out of it. So very few people are going to hack, if any, are going to hack a blockchain with hash keys on it. So when sharing the data, the blockchain will identify the identity of all the players involved in a particular community. So this could be it could be an insurance transaction, it could be a banking transaction, it could be a community of people all together in a like a dating area, or in a community of people that all share the same risk or the same kind of components in life, looking at things in life. So let's get onto this. And the touch points here is the basis of Know Thy Customer, an AML. So when you get onto the blockchain with your identity, it can be your Know Thy Customer. It can be your factor that you had a due diligence done on you, so that identity can be reused over and over again, and you don't have to keep doing due diligence because you already have a credential as Know Thy Customer. So, and this takes us into what happened in Estonia in 2008. So in 2008, the country of Estonia was recovering from a cyber attack in 2007, which actually closed down the country for 5 days. From that particular attack, they managed to create a new kind of digital society based on initially identities, so that this kind of attack wouldn't happen again. So we look here about risk intelligence, risk ledgers, and look at how we can manage any kind of information flow. And in fact, Estonia is completely digitized and has raised their GDP by 2%. So if we look a little closer here, we should look now at the data integrity portion of this and the privacy aspects. When you look at data, you look at a triangle. We look at protecting our data in a perimeter so that someone can't break through, and then we have antivirus for that. We then look at encrypting our data, which is privacy, to make sure that no one can read our data because it's encrypted. And then we have a third part of the triangle, which is the integrity, which is the actual data itself. And unfortunately, recently, most of the emphasis has been done on encryption and availability, and not on integrity. So the blockchain itself needs to show us what is happening to the data as well. So without all these three components, we will never have, we'll never be able to create a proper identity system and equate this data to certain identities. For example, if somebody hacks into my record and they steal my blood type through the encryption, I won't know that because encryption doesn't tell you what data is taken. If I don't have integrity, my identity could now be associated with a blood type that is not mine. That would be extremely serious if I had had a blood transfusion, and I wouldn't be doing any more of these presentations. So we must be very careful to understand about data integrity and the difference between that and privacy. And this is the whole basis between GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation that comes into force May 23rd, 2018, where every identity needs to be associated with these rights. And if you don't follow these rights and you have a data breach, you will be in quite big trouble. Big trouble in fines, in trading, because you have breached the privacy of individuals and therefore their right to identity. So it is very important that the GDPR and all acts are incorporated in all blockchain applications and is very closely tied to identity. This is Estonia. If we look here, the Estonian attack, after the 2007 attack, I said so, after this attack, you see Estonia has become NATO's cybersecurity headquarters. It is now the headquarters of the NATO cyber defense, and it's been so for 10 years. And the digital identity here is mandatory, and it's been mandatory in this country for 16 years. So Estonia has become the poster child for identity, and everything in that country is digitized, and everything is related to digital identity. And the e-residents, these are people like non-Estonians who can become an e-resident of Estonia, will have the same assurance on Know Thy Customer after due diligence as any Estonian citizen. So a very important country for digital identity and a poster child and pioneer in this area. So what do we look at here? Estonian scientists have built technology where we can verify every event in cyberspace and make sure the privacy of each event is maintained, but the integrity of the event cannot be denied. That means we cannot, we cannot say we didn't do it. It will enable us to say this is the liability area of this particular breach or this particular area. So look at what happens in Estonia. There is transparency between governments, corporations, and different people. And it's political will how this is put in, but the basis of it, because a lot of it comes from the military, I would say that if you haven't done military with blockchain, you shouldn't be putting that into other areas, because military has trust but verify. So we're moving away from trust to truth. So trust is not good enough. We have to have truth. And this will enforce trust but verify, so that we have verification of everything that happens in cyberspace and to whose identity it is there. So you can't be perfect at preventing crime, but you can be perfect at detecting it. And this is the basis of the Estonian mantra. So what have they done in Estonia? They've empowered the people. You can do everything online, really, 3,000 government services. Only a few things that you might not want to do online, like marriage. You probably want to get married in person. But most of the services here are already on a identity card or a smartphone. And of course, we look at the easy identification here. So blockchain identification is the key business. Proof of identity is the mainstay of this. And of course, now we come on to Ydentity, we have a long trail of identity that is added on to the proof of identity so that we can verify people in a different way. They can get back on the blockchain, as I said, or they can use these other IDs for different functions, even because they are already established on that blockchain. So, and that digital identity means you know who owns the data. So sensitive data at all is not stored on the blockchain, because otherwise that will make it available for hacking. So just to end on this identity thing, as an introduction here, these are the kind of services that can be added on to an ID when you are looking at a country and a business, and you can add identification, travel, state services, healthcare, loyalty, public transport, driving licenses, all voting, all of these services can be spun off of the identity ledger. And we are going to add Ydentity to this list. So here is Ydentity. But without just talking to Ydentity on its own, I want to equate it to insurance, because insurance is the underpinning of risk management in the, in the world, right? So without insurance, banks don't operate. Babies aren't born in hospitals. All sorts of issues are there without insurance, and it's the oxygen of free enterprise and the DNA of capitalism. Therefore, we need to look at how we would maybe look at insurance first as an application of some kind of new, innovative identity, product. So it's about making new markets. It's all about making new markets. This is about creating markets that don't exist at the moment. And right now, Ydentity is based on cognitive neuroscience. It's a way of identifying risk of an individual, of their capabilities, or whether they are seeking for risk, whether they are adverse of risk, or whether they are maybe dependent or neutral of risk. And interestingly, this has been a concept that's been used in insurance for many, many years as a way of looking at how we underwrite and how we take risks. But now that we're adding a kind of cognitive approach, if you like, an AI approach, artificial intelligence approach as well, to this, it makes us look at underwriting in a very different way. And this could be also equated to banking, it could be equated to investment, but what we're doing, we're actually making a new market alongside some of the existing markets. And within this market, we can create new products, we get new customers, and we particularly can address millennials and younger people who are all peer-to-peer based, and they think about talking to each other all the time. So we can form not only new markets, we can form new communities. And so these new communities could be based around risk-adverse people, risk-seeking people, risk-dependent people. So, and these communities could then function together. But HR departments of insurance companies for years have done some kind of profiling to see if somebody will be suitable for mathematical work like actuarial, or they will be suitable for marketing, one side of the brain or the other side of the brain. So this actually psychometric, based on fact and based on science, is going to give the insurance industry another underwriting parameter in which to work with, and that's going to be a very welcome thing for the management of risk. So what do we look at here? We look at these Ydentity logos, and they demonstrate the different kinds of risk seeking, risk adverse, and these are dependent, and these are the logos that are given to the community, which is called the Y community. And then these bolder ones are people that kind of are watchdogs, or people that monitor the others in a community group to make sure that these communities are functioning well together in a peer-to-peer area. And when we look at this now, we can look at underwriters. We will be able to understand a lot better about our customers, how we should anticipate how we work with the communities, because we have in the insurance industry, we have a need to bring better services to the consumer. We need to be more customer centric. We need to bring data ownership to the customer. The recent Facebook issue where Facebook was seen to give data to third parties was seen as a kind of loss of trust by many of the customers. And as blockchain, as we said, moves from trust to truth and removes the trust deficit, we can take advantage of that now and put the power into the hands of the consumer here. And if they understand their risk better, they'll understand their data better, and they'll understand their products better. So we can understand all of these issues of sensitive data, and therefore we can comply with GDPR. So the underwriter and Ydentity, a very important new concept in the insurance world. And of course it's based on tokens. So tokenization of the insurance industry and other sectors has started. It's early days, but the train has left the station, and we've all heard of Bitcoin, we've all heard of digital coins or digital tokens. They already exist. This is not about currency. We've all heard of security tokens, maybe, where we own an equity in something, and that would be a kind of a financial token, and of course could be used in conjunction with a currency token. This is not about that. This is about another kind of token called a utility token. Now, a utility token is something that we work with in our everyday life. We have air miles, we have fertilizer bags, we have garbage bags. These are all tokens, and they could have some kind of use attached to them, right? So let's take a door key. A door key is not a currency. A door key is not a security. A door key is a utility because it opens the door. So when we buy a door key, we buy it to open the door. And so therefore, Ydentity is a form of utility token because it actually does something. And what it does, it creates a product profile, not an astrological star chart, for example, used to be done where you would do somebody's profile on astrology and you would give them a star chart as a product. This is actually going to give a risk profile product about how your brain is functioning in conjunction with cognitive neuroscience. So there is a product from this token, and therefore it's a utility token. So that means we can use that, and it will store it in a digital wallet, and that digital wallet would then be used by the consumer to go into dating, go into insurance, go into banking, do anything they like with their identity and share with their peers. Behind this is Estonian technology. So we really do need to make sure that we do have a very good security and well-used and established standard behind these tokens. So a company called GuardTime from Estonia has created a standard called keyless signature infrastructure, which is used in the Estonian digital society. It's used in the defense industry. It's used all around the world now over the last 10 years in different industries to protect the integrity of data, and from that integrity of data to prove GDPR compliance. So the Ydentity token has this kind of signature, keyless signature underneath it, where each piece of data and hash key is actually protected by this blockchain identification ledger. So very important to know that we will know what goes on in an ecosystem. We will be able to prove it, and we'll be able to look at the data provenance. So this is a combination of tokenization, blockchain technology, and Estonian ledger identification. The biggest problem, of course, with blockchain is onboarding. If you need to get, everybody needs to be onto an ecosystem. So it's no good having one insurance company on side and then trying to trade with people that are not actually on that ecosystem. So we need to be able to get people on board. So Ydentity acts as a very good remote onboarding challenge here and solve that challenge, because when you've got a community there, the community will onboard to new products. So we can use the Ydentity as a remote onboarding to get people onto ecosystems that weren't there before. So this is a very strong motivator for industry, and industry will share Ydentity to reduce the overhead of moving to the blockchain, and that's why there's multiple consortiums working together in insurance, in banking, in healthcare, and they're going to share this kind of peer-to-peer environment and share the cost. So very important onboarding. And finally, what of the future? Well, if blockchain lives up to the potential that it started is, it will introduce a level of democracy and truth to the digital world that the physical world cannot match. This is about democratization of processes, decentralization, democratization, individuals owning self-sovereign identity. And of course, with that self-sovereign identity, all these other identities that help identify a person. And that means that no one has absolute power online, and no one can lie about the past or current events. So I think we're into a very interesting world of identity. I think that we're going to look here at new forms of identity complementing the national identity, and that is going to shape the way that we do business in future. So thank you for your attention.